Welcome to the LSU Sports Insider podcast, brought to you by the journalists at The Advocate, NOLA.com, and the Times-Picayune. My name is Perryn Keys. I'm the executive sports editor. I'm joined today by Reed Darcey, one of our esteemed LSU football beat writers, and by Jack Nicklaus, who's decided to come in here from Augusta National, disguised as Scott Rabalais. Gentlemen, welcome in.
Yeah, this is what Jack wore, a yellow shirt. It went very good with the green
in the
jacket.
86 Masters, yes. We all remember, and we know you remember more than anybody else.
Oh, yes, sure. Absolutely.
Good morning, good afternoon, good night, good evening. This is the LSU Sports Insider, where we come to you live every Monday and Thursday on all our social channels, all our YouTube channels, specifically LSU Tigers at NOLA.com. You can catch us live there. If you don't catch us live, by all means, you can catch us later on that same YouTube channel, LSU Tigers at NOLA.com. Later on, you can also please subscribe, if you would, to The Advocate. Go to theadvocate.com/subscribe. That's theadvocate.com/subscribe. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever other finer podcasts are found. And if you want to stay up to date, in addition to this podcast and to all our stories, please get a hold of our LSU newsletter. It's a daily newsletter, but Rab handles that 3 times a week. Obviously, we've got LSU women's basketball, LSU men's basketball, baseball, gymnastics will be starting up soon. And so you'll want to stay up to date, not only on Jayden Daniels' Heisman pursuit and Malik Nabers' Biletnikoff award pursuit, and whatever else LSU may get themselves into on the football field, but also everything else related to LSU athletics. And so to sign up for our LSU newsletter, you go to theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. That's theadvocate.com LSU newsletter. We are brought to you today and every day by Champion Wealth Strategies. Champion Wealth Strategies is a national financial services firm specializing in the capital markets, securities, insurance, 401ks, and college and retirement planning. Our broker-dealer is LPL, financial member FINRA, SIPC. And as you know, investments are not FDIC insured, may lose value, and have no bank guarantee. But to find out more, contact Champion Wealth Strategies. To do that, you go to championwealthstrategies.com. Contact Champion Wealth Strategies and plan like a champion today. So, gentlemen, how you guys doing on this fine Thursday afternoon?
You know, I'm fine. I'm kind of excited about the game. I know it's Georgia State, but there's reasons to be excited.
Well, in a lot of ways, it feels almost like a second season. The LSU's pursuits, team pursuits and team goals are sort of, they're very clearly off the board. Came in with high expectations, hovering right in the top 5, top 10 going into the season. And coming off of an SEC West championship, they would have had to hustle to win the West again, but clearly had designs on going to the SEC championship game again and maybe making some hay. Those goals are obviously by the wayside, but from those ashes rise all of a sudden a resurgent Heisman Trophy campaign for Jayden Daniels, who we've discussed many times, has looked very much like the best quarterback in the nation. 3,164 yards passing, 30 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 918 yards rushing, and 8 touchdowns. And that's really where we will start today. We can get it all into Georgia State if we want to, and we'll get into that a little bit. But really, this is, I think, the far and away the number one storyline that everybody's sort of paying attention to. And it's weird, Rab, I'll just ask you to start off. Can you recall a time? I can't recall a time where LSU's sort of got this weird, okay, the season goals are by the wayside, but now you've got this other thing that can really pique your interest. You've never had really a Heisman Trophy candidate who's in this position wearing an LSU uniform, have you?
The only thing you could kind of think of, and I'm going way back, is Charles Alexander in like 1977 or 77. LSU had a real prolific offense, and he was the centerpiece of it. And but every other time, LSU was a national player in 1959 when Billy Cannon won the Heisman. Certainly when Joe Burrow won it, and of course when Tyrann Mathieu was a finalist in 2011. LSU played for the national championship. So yeah, this is different kind of territory. It's all about Jayden. It's even overshadowed what people's concerns about the defense, which is really impressive.
Yeah. Well, I think, and I don't want to speak for anybody else, and Reed, by all means, chime in and tell me what you think. I think everybody has sort of resigned themselves to the notion that the LSU defense is not going to be very good, and it's almost, I don't want to call it incidental, because I think if you're a true LSU football fan, you do still want to see improvement, particularly out of the younger players who are in the secondary and even on the front seven. But everybody's just sort of, I think, resigned themselves to the notion that this defense is only ever going to be what it is.
Right.
And there's 2 weeks to go, and yet again, those goals, those team goals, are by the wayside. And so, all right, let's speaking in the voice of LSU fans, let's focus all our attention on number 5 here and to see if he can make up the gap. So I don't know. Anything you want to? This is a different field, don't you think, Reed?
Yeah, I think the defense sort of it already cost LSU everything it could have cost them.
Yeah.
Putting them out of the SEC championship picture and certainly out of the college football playoff picture. But I think what fans just need to look at these last 2 games, just like you only get 2 more chances to see Jayden Daniels and this offense play in Tiger Stadium. They got Georgia State this week and then A&M the next week, and that's it. You'll see Jayden go off to the NFL, same with Malik Nabers and Brian Thomas. So this offense, which is probably the second best in school history, you only got 2 more chances to see it. So you might as well, enjoy it while they last.
And to see the season finale, so to speak, you're going to have to wake up early to check out LSU against Texas A&M next week. It'll be an 11 a.m. kickoff, much to people's dismay, I'm sure.
But it's made these last 2 games that could be just, let's finish the season, play out the string. It's made it much more compelling theater.
100%, yes.
Yeah, because he's going to have, can he put up the numbers? Is he going to impress the voters? Can he do it again next week against Texas A&M, which has, a pretty good defense?
Right,
so
and we'll get into Texas
impressive.
A&M, and I've got some thoughts about why I think maybe Texas A&M is going to be a tougher out than you might think for a team that's fired its football coach, and again is also playing out the string. I was going to let's get deep into this Jayden Daniels deal. When we started off this week on Sunday night, if you were to be shopping around, I happen to be shopping around Caesars Sportsbook. And at that time, Bo Nix was a considerable favorite. He was at -110. Michael Penix was at +290. Jayden Daniels was +425. As of Thursday morning, Bo Nix +100. Jayden Daniels and Michael Penix are tied at +350. I don't mind telling you that I was a little surprised by this, because I didn't know, and I still don't know, how much the sort of the average college football fan or the average sports fan, or really for that matter, the average Heisman voter, is really paying enough attention or paying the same level of attention to a quarterback whose team has 3 losses. And a lot of times that's sort of a disqualification, whether it should be or not, versus these two other quarterbacks who are going to look like they are primed to duke it out for the Pac-12 championship. So I suppose if you are pulling for Jayden Daniels, that's a good sign. And Rab, do you think this is something that the Heisman voters are going to take seriously?
Yeah, this is one of the more interesting questions about Jayden's candidacy. And I'm a Heisman voter. You're a Heisman voter. You like to think you pay attention, and you're looking at all these guys and trying to get a good picture of who you're going to vote for. Not just first, but first, second, and third. I mean, it all adds up. And this year, especially when you anticipate, you got to figure it's got to be a close race, right? This year, so. But you're asking a lot of voters to really do their homework, and to be really discerning about a candidate like Jayden. He's got now after the Florida game, though, he's got that hook. The first player in FBS history with 350 yards passing and 200 yards rushing in the same game. We've written it, obviously. It's been said all over the place. I was watching a little clip this morning from the SEC Network with Takeo Spikes, the former Auburn player, is now an analyst, and he said it. So that's good. That resonates with voters. So wow. A voter's got to think in Nebraska or New Jersey or Delaware has got to think, well, this is a guy who's done something that's never been done. Okay, I got to pay attention to this guy. So that helps. But it's easy to just go and say, 2 Fridays from now, Oregon and Washington likely. Oregon State can throw a wrench into the works, but are likely going to play for the Pac-12 championship and a bid to the college football playoff, and that guy is probably going to be the front runner for the Heisman. But Jayden's making them think, and if they're willing to think, then he's got a shot with those voters. If they're just kind of, I got other things to do, fill up my ballot and go, then that's going to be to his detriment. And it's again something he has to overcome that other candidates don't.
And Rab, you mentioned the importance of sort of capturing the imagination, I guess, of the Heisman voters. LSU plays Georgia State this weekend, then at Texas A&M at 11 a.m. next week. So is he sort of lost? Does he have any more chances down the stretch to capture their imagination, or has he already done it? I guess against Florida and previously in the season.
I think the voters are going to be looking for something. Yeah, dazzle me. I think they'll be looking for something. So I think it's important that they keep the hammer down offensively against Georgia State and do everything you can against Texas A&M. So it would not hurt.
That was going to be my sort of next subtopic of this whole discussion, which is okay. Well, first and foremost, Bo Nix. Jayden Daniels is going to be playing against Georgia State. Georgia State actually got off to a really strong start this year. I think they were 4-1. They have not looked anything like that since. They're an average Sun Belt team, and I'm being polite when I say average. Georgia State's 128th in the nation in pass defense. That's considerably worse than LSU, which is 101st. This is, by any measure, probably going to be the worst pass defense that Jayden Daniels faces. But the way I look at this, and I'll submit to you guys whether you agree. I'll ask you guys whether you agree. I don't know how much you can do to boost your campaign if you're Jayden Daniels, because you can only, and in many respects, I wonder if you can only hurt your campaign. What I mean by that is, if you throw for 426 yards and 3 touchdowns against Georgia State, well, great, you were supposed to do it. But if you, quote unquote, only throw for 220 yards and 1 touchdown, and you take a seat on the bench after halftime because LSU's got it in the bag, well, then people, just as you say, people who maybe aren't paying as close attention as to why this is and what he did and what he didn't do, that may work against him. I don't know. Tell me what you think about all this, Reed.
That's kind of, I think that's a little bit unfair, because
I think it's unfair as well.
It's unfair to him because if everything goes right, he only plays 2 quarters against Georgia State. Right. So the numbers aren't going to look as good as they would have looked had he played the entire game. So you just have to look based on the time that he does play. How does he look in the time that he plays? And against A&M, does LSU win that game? And how well does Jayden Daniels play in that game? So I think, just if you look back, if he does win the Heisman and you look back at where he sort of won it, you're going to look back at the Florida game. That was his big statement. That was his big play where he captured the imagination of voters. That's going to be it. And I don't think he's just going to get another opportunity to do that these last 2 weeks of the season. So that performance better be fresh in the mind of all the voters when it comes time to vote.
Not to win it, but certainly to lose it, unless he does something like he hurdles a linebacker and goes to the zone. This is something to just go, wow,
an acrobatic.
Yeah, just something that you can't predict, and you certainly can't try to create.
And something that's maybe easily digestible and a clip that you can find on Twitter if you're scanning around, or it's going to wind up on SportsCenter Top 10 or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But he can lose it. No, but you're right, and this speaks to how much does LSU play him? As Reed said, look, Georgia State's got a terrible defense, and the game could definitely be well out of hand by halftime. It could be 42-6 at halftime or something like that. I think you got to keep playing him. And Brian Kelly, I asked Brian Kelly this on the SEC coaches teleconference on Wednesday. How do you balance this? Your approach in the game. And coaches, of course, never like to talk about. We're gonna. When we blow them out, we're going to do this. Obviously, they don't want to say that. He said we're going to look at it quarter by quarter, which tells me that they're going to evaluate, his stats. And Brian has publicly, is pushing him for the Heisman, as well as Malik for the Biletnikoff. And so I think they're going to go out there and have to show no mercy against Georgia State, quite frankly.
I happen to think, and I'll put this next question to you, Rab. I happen to think that he's going to have to do something similar against Texas A&M, which incidentally does have a very good pass defense, despite all its shortcomings. Texas A&M has done well against the pass. I think he's going to have to put up a similar kind of show against Texas A&M, and the reason I bring that up is because, and I know we've discussed this before, but look, Jayden Daniels is going to be on the last weekend before the Heisman votes are due. Presumably, and we'll get into this too, Michael Penix and Bo Nix will be squaring off against each other in the Pac-12 championship game. Jayden Daniels is not going to be able to leave one more lasting memory for the Heisman voters on that weekend because LSU will not be playing for a championship. I know this has been done before. I know we've discussed this before. The Lamar Jackson example, the Tim Tebow example. Is there any benefit that Jayden Daniels may have in not playing? Because I frankly can't see one.
Only that you can't have a bad performance.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have a game where, like when they played Georgia last year in the SEC championship game, he got knocked out. He didn't. That's a different Jayden Daniels. Obviously, he's a better quarterback.
And
now.
Georgia was always going to beat LSU in that game.
Yeah, but so he could go to Atlanta, be going to Atlanta to play Georgia and get stuffed into a Gatorade tank or something like that. But I mean, it's so that's not going to happen. But yeah, generally it's a disadvantage, clearly.
Yeah, and if that weekend, if Bo Nix and Michael Penix, assuming they do play in the Pac-12 championship, do they cancel each other out? Do they look sort of average in that game? You know, there's two really good teams, and they're going to be battling it out. And the defense, both defenses are good. So if they sort of put up decent performances, you know, you can sort of look at Jayden and say, hey, this dude's numbers have always been eye-popping all year. So I guess maybe that might be able to play into Jayden's hands. But again, if either of those dudes look awesome in that Pac-12 championship and it leads to a college football playoff berth for one of those teams, then it's going to be a tough sell to vote for Jayden, particularly when he's not playing.
I gotta say that after LSU lost at Alabama, which, you know, to one degree or another was sort of, we don't know whether LSU could have beaten Alabama if Jayden Daniels had stayed and been able to play all four quarters. We don't know. I happen to think that they probably wouldn't have been able to beat him because I don't know if LSU was ever going to stop the run. But we don't know, and I happen to think that after that game that his Heisman chances were probably pretty much done. I still was a little skeptical and still am slightly skeptical about what voters may or may not do because just what we're talking about, he's going to be in the clubhouse that last weekend of the season. But the odds are moving in the right direction. So I'm going to have to sort of rethink about all this, rethink his chances, and maybe sort of talk myself into the possibility that we all believe he's going to New York, right? I mean, barring some sort of disaster, we all think he's going to New York. He's going to be a finalist. The other thing, too, is that, listen, there's always a distinct possibility that either Bo Nix or Michael Penix may trip up here as we go down the road. And I do want to bring this up very specifically this weekend. Bo Nix has got to go to Arizona State. Arizona State's 3-7. They're not a good football team. Kenny Dillingham in his first year as coach over there. But they're 8th in the Pac-12 in the standings. Or excuse me, 8th in the Pac-12 in pass defense. But it's worth noting that when they went up to Seattle and played the Huskies, they gave Michael Penix his, they held him down, and that was his worst performance of the year. He didn't throw for a touchdown. Matter of fact, Washington didn't score an offensive touchdown. They had to win basically on a pick six in the fourth quarter because Arizona State decided to go for it on 4th and short, which I don't blame them for doing, incidentally, based on what was going on in that game. But anyway, they've got Arizona State. Oregon's got Arizona State up next. After that, they play Oregon State, which is going to be a tough game. Oregon State
wants blood.
Oregon State wants blood. They're number 12 in the nation right now. And yes, I mean, listen, I know we discussed this a little bit on Monday's podcast, but Oregon State and Washington State are going to have something for these teams going down the road because we saw Bedlam. You saw what happened in Bedlam this year. Oklahoma State. I mean, I'll tell you what that atmosphere reminded me like in Stillwater. And of course, I wasn't there, but Rab, you're going to remember this very, very distinctly. Do you remember the atmosphere in the PMAC? The night that LSU was playing Vanderbilt, the last game of the season, Will Wade had just got suspended. It was sort of this weird combination of celebratory because LSU's got a chance to win and hang a banner, plus we've got like venom spewing from our fangs. We were out for blood because we can't believe this happened to our coach. It was an insane atmosphere, wasn't it? That was what crossed my mind actually when we were watching Bedlam unfold in Stillwater. The Oklahoma State, I think the players, the fans certainly were out for blood, for lack of a better way to put it, because they wanted to get one more shot at the Sooners on the way out. I think that's going to be very similar for Oregon State when they play Oregon. Oregon State's got Washington actually this weekend. Oregon State's a tough team. They're third in the Pac-12. The odds are against them, but if they win out, they'll wind up in the Pac-12 championship game. So not only do they want their pound of flesh, so to speak, but they've also got something to play for in terms of team goals. So I don't know. I guess sort of in summation, I would ask you, what happens if over these next two games, before they even get to the Pac-12 title game, Bo Nix suffers a loss or Michael Penix suffers a loss? Now we've seen Jayden Daniels suffer 3 losses and he's still in the mix. But will they get dinged a little bit more because, frankly, their numbers aren't as good as Jayden Daniels' numbers? Oh, yeah. I mean, it would definitely play to Jayden. You could possibly, under that scenario, see Jayden emerging as the odds-on favorite. So, yeah, anything that you mentioned the Arizona State game for Washington and for Penix, he had if you remember the time, he had a huge lead in terms of the odds. And that brought him back to the pack, and now he's second favorite or whatever, behind Bo Nix. And I wonder if there's any other voters who cover SEC football, by the way, aside from me, who remember Bo Nix at Auburn and think, I just can't picture this guy as the Heisman Trophy winner. I do want to say to yourself and everybody who's listening and watching that you got to get that out of your head. I'm being serious when I say this. Bo Nix was a 59% passer at Auburn. And so everything you're saying is true. It's just like, this can't be the same guy I'm watching who's lighting it up at Oregon. But my counterpoint to that is, we discussed this before on the podcast, when we're back here, as we say, putting the paper to bed at night, we're watching some Pac-12 After Dark. And we would watch this skinny kid at Arizona State take off after the first read almost every single time. Now, he was great, and he's still great running, with the ball in his hands on a scramble. But Jayden Daniels, I would say that there are probably just as many people out on the West Coast or, coast to coast saying, this guy can't be actually doing what he's doing, right? He's spent 3 years at Arizona State not being a particularly... I judge Bo Nix by the season he's having. I can't hold it against him. At the time, though, I thought his dad was a better quarterback than Bo Nix. Yeah, we remember him, sure. Patrick Nix was never even mentioned for the Heisman Trophy. So, good on him. Look, they're both... All three of these guys are examples of players who transferred and blossomed at their new schools. Yeah, that's right. Penix was at Indiana, it's something that happens a lot in college football, and certainly we saw it 4 or 5 years ago with Joe Burrow. Had a very similar season to Jayden Daniels in 2018. Some ups, some downs, and then he kind of started getting better and getting better. And of course, the Fiesta Bowl, he was tremendous. Yeah, and then Jayden was the same way. Remember, what did he throw for against Auburn last year at Auburn? It was 80 yards. Yeah. Now it's just like, you just make all these plays and these great passes. And what do we get to? What did I ask? You remember what Coach Kelly at the press conference Monday said to you? What is the thing he's improved at the most? In his time here, and he said his ability to hit the long passes. It wasn't his progression, which I think most of us would say. He did say that later, but he said almost immediately deep ball. Yeah, the deep ball. His touch on the deep balls is exquisite, and like I said, if you're really paying attention, you're a voter. You have to think no one else can do what he does in terms of hurting you with the run and able to hit those deep passes. Because I saw Trevor Maddich Wednesday night during a halftime of a game. They were talking about all the Heisman contenders and Marvin Harrison as well at Ohio State, and he was naming all their qualifications. And he said, when it came to Daniels, he said, most times when you have someone who can hit the deep ball like that, they can't run very well. Right. When someone's a great runner, they can't hit the deep ball, and he does both. Right. And if people hear that enough, they're going to really think and go, he really is a unique talent. You need to take a long look at this guy. I got to take a longer look at this guy. I think, in summation, again, I think if you're an LSU football fan, this is sort of your viewer's guide, actually, for this weekend. What you would hope, and this is the way I feel about in terms of how if things were to play out exactly the way you would like for them to play out to give Jayden Daniels his best case for the Heisman, Washington would lose this weekend or next weekend, but most likely this weekend at Oregon State. That line has been around a pick 'em right around in there, and Oregon State's undefeated at home. They're not to be trifled with. I'll put it to you like that. Let's just say that were to happen. Washington loses at Arizona State. Washington loses at Oregon State and then wins the next couple of games. including the Pac-12 championship.
Right,
Oregon
right.
goes in, they win against Arizona State or Oregon State. They lose one way or the other, but they go through and they lose the Pac-12 championship. Michael Penix, in the meantime, loses one of these earlier games and then wins the Pac-12 championship. Particularly if they only, again, we say this again, particularly if they look only kind of so-so in that Pac-12 championship, which would be a surprise. But that would be that would help Jayden Daniels' case, sort of like Jean Van de Velde there at where was that, where he just kept on rinsing the ball, when he had it in the bag?
The 99 British Open.
There you have it. See? I know I could count on you there, Jack Nicklaus, Seve, whichever your favorite.
Jack Nicklaus would never have done that. He would have played the hole with a putter.
Oh, no, he would have played smart. Yeah.
Can I throw in one thing?
Yeah, sure.
There's probably some LSU fans or people watching our podcast who are saying, we're like, why is this important? The season is the team goals that I care about. Winning the national championship, winning the SEC, and this team has come up short in those areas. And I would say, it's always important to win something like the Heisman. It gives this season more meaning. The fact that Jayden's a strong contender for the Heisman, that he could win it, and it helps you in the future. If LSU's trying to recruit Bryce Underwood, it's pretty much LSU and Michigan for the number one quarterback in the country. Is he this year's
He's
class?
25.
25, yeah. So long term, but players like that who say, "Whoa, LSU can, I can go to LSU and I can flourish like Jayden Daniels." That's important.
And or if you've got a high level corner, corner back, then you maybe want to recruit him off of Bowling Green or wherever he is right now, and you can instead of saying, "Hey, quarterbacks come here and you kick a certain body part and take names," well, you could also apply that to say, hey, transfers are welcome here. They come in here. They absolutely make a splash. And by the way, we really, really need some corners on this team. So why don't you come on down and have fun?
You can start right away for sure.
I think you can make that case. Speaking of making cases, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't bring up Malik Nabers as well. Malik Nabers obviously leads the nation in yards receiving. And I think we all agree that he will probably be a finalist for the Biletnikoff Award. He's got 1,284 yards receiving, 10 touchdowns. But he's got some work to do, I think, to make up the ground between himself and Marvin Harrison, who is the favorite to win the Biletnikoff. Marvin Harrison has 1,063 yards and 12 touchdowns. But the thing that I think Marvin Harrison has working for him, and I don't mean this in a mean-spirited way, but I do think he's got name recognition working for him. He came in to this season as the presumed best wide receiver in the nation, and he hasn't done anything to necessarily disqualify himself from that designation. Sort of with that in mind, I would say, Reed, what do you think would have to happen over the next 2 or 3 weeks for Malik to be able to overtake Marvin Harrison and win the Biletnikoff?
Well, I think it's important to point out that Marvin Harrison is a generationally good wide receiver prospect.
Yes.
And in terms of looking at the NFL level, he's going to be the first receiver taken in the draft. Overall, he's a better, more well-rounded receiver than Malik Nabers.
He looks the part.
Yes. He's not. That's not a knock on Malik. Malik's awesome. Marvin Harrison is insane. So I think just in terms of pure receiver, Marvin Harrison is the better receiver. But if you're looking at the Biletnikoff Award, you have to decide, okay, who's had the better season? And if you look at the numbers, it's been Nabers. Obviously, there's more context to that. But I think what could maybe put Nabers over the top is if he sets a couple of these records that he could set the next couple of weeks of the season. I believe only the second receiver in LSU history to eclipse how many yards? Oh, I'm blanking.
Over 1,700 yards, I think.
But he joins Josh Reed.
Yeah.
It'll be for 3,000.
Yeah. So
for the career. I'm sorry.
Yeah, for the career, 3,000 yards. So I think if he accomplishes that and puts together a back-to-back 1,000-yard season, I think that could really help his case. I think that's probably the minimum he needs to do. And again, against Texas A&M, really good defense, really good secondary. If he lights them up, if he puts together a monster game against them, then that might be the icing on the cake for him.
Some of these, it's one where the Heisman differs from a lot of these individual awards. I think Heisman voters generally look more at season to season. They're not like saying, well, it's a career award. Or with some of these individual awards, it's more like a career achievement award. We saw with Grant Delpit in 2019.
I was going to bring him up.
Yeah, and we saw with Glenn Dorsey in 2007. He had a better 2006 than 07. In 07, he was injured, but he swept all these, just about anything a lineman could win. Still the most decorated player, I think, in LSU history. And it really his year before that was better, but it was kind of like it's an accumulation of things. And that's what Marvin Harrison goes for. I fully expect that he's going to win the Biletnikoff. People just decided, as Reed said, he's the best player. He was the best receiver coming in. He's going to be the best receiver going out in the NFL draft. And Malik would have to have, I don't know what he'd have to do in the last couple of games, like over 200 yards receiving and 6 touchdowns per game or something like that. I don't know, to beat him.
The only other thing I'll add to that, and I do still think that no matter what happens, Marvin Harrison's probably got it in the bag. But the Ohio State plays Minnesota. They've got Minnesota at home this week. Minnesota's 9th in the Big Ten in pass defense, nothing special. And then they go to Michigan. Of course, that'll be all eyes, all of college football's eyes will be on that game.
While LSU's playing A&M.
While LSU's playing A&M, which again I think obviously works against Jayden Daniels.
It does.
It was when they were playing when Jayden had his great game against Missouri. That was going on the same time as the Texas State Fair, Texas and OU. So how many people were really paying attention? I think they're paying attention in aggregate, but they're not necessarily maybe paying attention to some of his best performances. Anyway, all eyes will be on that Michigan-Ohio State game up in the Big House.
I'm kind of bummed I'm going to miss that Michigan-Ohio State game.
Oh, sure. I mean, who among us wouldn't be, what would have been better than, maybe speaking only for myself, but what would have been better than watching Michigan, Ohio State, then flipping the channel, keeping your eye on the Bayou Classic, and then and then you cap off your night with LSU versus Texas A&M at night, which we all know the fans would have much preferred here in Tiger Stadium. The only thing I'll say in regard to Marvin Harrison is what happens if he, and I still don't think it's enough to get Malik over the hump, but what happens if Marvin Harrison does whatever he does against Minnesota and then Michigan just shuts him down? Michigan wins that game, 31-7, and Marvin Harrison has 2 catches for 19 yards or something like that. I still think probably in much the same way or in similar way that you were talking about Glenn Dorsey having a better year in 06 than he did in 07. Grant Delpit having had a better year in 18 than he did in 19. That sort of people will kind of look at the season that Marvin Harrison has had, and as you mentioned, Reed, kind of the prospect that he is, and just reputation is going to kind of earn it for him, whether it's right or wrong. I'm not here to say, but I think we all agree, generally speaking, that Malik Nabers had a sensational year. There would be nothing wrong if he did win the Biletnikoff. Everybody would be happy down here if he did, but he's got an uphill climb, and a pretty steep uphill climb.
I agree.
I think to say.
I think it's pretty much in the bag for Marvin Harrison at this point, no matter what happens against Michigan.
And it's a shame, but it doesn't mean that Malik has not had.
No, he should be a first team All-American. That would be the one that would be like that would be a travesty if he wasn't a first team All-American.
That's correct. That does make a lot of sense. This is the LSU Sports Insider podcast, brought to you by the journalists at The Advocate, NOLA.com, and the Times-Picayune. We're here every Monday and Thursday on all our social channels, our YouTube channels, specifically LSU Tigers at NOLA.com. You can always find us there. If you don't find us live, you can find us later on that same YouTube channel at your leisure. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever other finer podcasts are found. We are here and we are open for business, I guess I should say. Please subscribe to The Advocate. To do that, you go to theadvocate.com/subscribe. That's theadvocate.com/subscribe. And please get a hold of all of our news, all the LSU news in one place. You can do that by signing up for our newsletter, which is a daily newsletter, but Rab handles that 3 times a week. So
Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
That's right. Support your local journalist. You can sign up for our newsletter at theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. Again, it's theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. And we are brought to you today and every day by Champion Wealth Strategies. To learn more, go to championwealthstrategies.com. Go to Champion Wealth Strategies and plan like a champion today. We've obviously discussed almost entirely this podcast about individual awards, specifically, obviously, the Heisman and the Biletnikoff Award. I will say, though, we probably should just discuss sort of if you're Brian Kelly, how do you handle these final two games? I tend to think that the offensive unit specifically is going to be, these guys all love the quarterback, and they're going to want to do, and I believe this. I really and truly believe this. I think they're going to want to do everything they possibly can and lay it all out there for him to give him the best shot to win a Heisman. I really believe that. But as the team in general, how do you handle this? How do you keep these guys engaged, wanting to continue to practice and play hard, wanting to continue to improve? And Rab, I'll also put this to you. What do you want to see from some of these guys, from some of these players who, frankly, need some improvement, and or what do you want to see against Georgia State, presuming that the game does get out of hand?
I just want to see, a commitment to look. It's important to try to get to win these last two games or win your bowl game and get to 10 wins again. That's
but how do you convince 19-year-olds that that's important?
I mean, just that. That's a good question. I mean, I think it's rising tide lifts all boats. I think it helps them all with their careers and their stature to show that they're not just bagging on the season. And I think for what it's worth they'll play for somebody like Jayden Daniels. I think he's one of the things he's got going for him with voters, and it probably goes for him with the team, is he's very likable. He's got a very likable personality, and he comes across very well. And I'm sure his teammates find him to be an amiable leader. Of them as well, so I think they're going to recognize that they can be part of something bigger and help lift Jayden up. The offensive line players are still talking about trying to win the Joe Moore Award, which is a group award.
Yep.
It's the best line in the country, and defensively, just got look. I need to improve. I mean, they're going to bring somebody in to replace me in the transfer portal possibly if I don't play better. So all those, there's a lot still on the table for these players. And like you said, they're young kids, and sometimes they're hard to reach. But I think. Just hearing the messages that we get from Brian Kelly, I think some of that's going to at least some of that's going to seep through to the players.
Reed, what would you like to see? What would you like to see on Saturday?
I'd like to see the offense just continue to be what it has been so far. And I think we talked to Malik Nabers on Tuesday, and we sort of asked him what's sort of been the key to unlocking this impressive season for you, and he sort of pointed to Jayden Daniels, and he said, and Jayden instilled that confidence in me, and Jayden worked with me. He taught me about the game, and then he put me in positions to succeed and to have this awesome season where I'm a finalist for the Biletnikoff, and I'm probably going to be a first-round NFL draft pick. So I think Malik looks at Jayden, and he's super grateful for that they found each other, I guess, and that they can sort of help each other have awesome seasons. And so I think that mindset probably permeates throughout the whole team. I think they love Jayden. I think they want to play for him, and I think they realize that, hey, we owe it to this guy to give him all we got, because Jayden, when he runs, he doesn't slide. He finishes those runs. He goes down. He takes a lot of punishment at the end of those runs, and the players see that, and they want to fight for him. So I think the Heisman Trophy has to be on everybody's minds, and it's going to be what everybody's thinking about and talking about for the last 2 weeks of the season.
So let's say it's the start of the fourth quarter. LSU's got it in hand. I'm just going to make up a number and say 38-7. Are there any players in particular who you'd like to see get some extra playing time? And all these players, I think, on defense are worthy of a longer look. But whom is there anybody in particular who you'd like to see get a longer look, whether it's the secondary or the front seven? Reed?
I think on defense, I'm not sure on defense. Maybe I don't know. Can I go offense?
Yeah, I would just say, guys like Jordan Allen. Jordan Allen played a good bit last week against Florida. Deshaun Womack,
edge rusher.
All these guys need a little bit of improvement. I think there's a lot of potential there, but they've clearly, we've clearly seen the need for improvement, not only on the defense, but in individual players. I think anybody like that who hasn't gotten a ton of experience, in a tight SEC game, I think it can only help guys like that.
Time for Whit Weeks to get back in there.
Yeah, Whit Weeks as well.
Get some play. Braden Swinson has shown great flashes of play, on the edge. I'd like to see more of him as well. And Parashan, too. But Braden Swinson, young player for the future.
Ashton Stamps. Anybody else at corner?
Ashton Stamps, I think LaTerrence Welch, some of those younger corners, Javian Toviano, converted safety corner. I think some of those young guys, if we can see them make strides and play well individually, I think that bodes well for the future. If you look on the offensive side of the ball, like I was going to say, obviously you lose Malik Nabers and Brian Thomas.
Yes.
What kind of young receivers do you want to step up? Maybe Chris Hilton next year. He's a junior, going to be a senior next year. He'll be back. Maybe get Aaron Anderson the ball some more. See what he's got for the future.
And you can play Sheldon Sampson. If you play him in a game like this, he's not going to burn his red shirt. He hasn't played in 4 yet. So any of those, I think, are certainly fine.
Caleb Jackson. Give Caleb Jackson the ball. I want to see what he does. Sometimes it's bad, like the kickoff return Saturday. Sometimes it's really, 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 really good. So I want to see what he does.
It can't hurt to get a guy like Trey Holly in there. He obviously flashed against our Army, and it would be good, I think, to keep these guys engaged, and into it and into the program. We're going to shift the focus a little bit here. We could make predictions about the Georgia State game, but LSU is a 31.5 point favorite.
Going to win, going to cover.
Yeah, we'll make that prediction by acclamation, and we'll move on to the state of the LSU women's team. They defeat Kent State the other day, 109-79. There was a young freshman by the name of Michaela Williams who had quite the effort. Reed, I'll just sort of let you go on here and give your 2 cents. Take this wherever you'd like to take it.
Ooh, Michaela is awesome. Rab, you were there on Tuesday. I mean, she has surpassed all of my expectations. I was not expecting her to look as good as she has for the first 4 games. And I think it's fair to say through the first 4 games, it's small sample size, but she's been LSU's best player. I think she's certainly been LSU's best scorer. And I think just the way that she stepped in and from day one, she's such an advanced, calm, comfortable scorer who can just attack the defense at all 3 levels. She's finished well at the rim. She's shot well from mid-range. She's created space in that area, and she's hit a lot of threes. She's shooting 60+% on her 3-pointers.
Surprised by how well she's done from 3-point range?
I am. Yeah. I am. Just going straight from high school to college, the defenders are taller and longer. They're faster. You have a lot less space out there. That cushion shrinks from high school to college. So I just think I've been blown away by how good she's looked, and if she can keep this up, obviously it's only 4 games, but if she can keep this up, that's absolutely huge for LSU and their national title chances.
You think of a freshman, you think of when Simone Augustus burst on the scene. She had 42. Michaela had 42 points against Kent State, 32 in the second half alone. Only the 11th 40-point game in LSU history. Simone Augustus, the most she ever scored, and it wasn't bad, 28 points as a freshman in a game. Yeah. So she kind of out-Simone the other day, which is saying something.
That's
for any
quite
player.
a bit.
She just looks very poised. Plus, she's made a few freshman mistakes, turned the ball over and stuff like that. But she doesn't seem to rush with her shot. It's a very smooth shot. And Simone Augustus never shot that many 3-pointers.
No, she was well known for her killer mid-range.
Yeah, 15 foot, 10, 12, 15 feet, deadly. But like Reed said, she can do all those things, and she's got size too for a guard. She's really as tall as Anissa Morrow, who's playing forward for LSU, the transfer from DePaul, who also had a great game Saturday. 17 points, 8 rebounds, 9 steals, second most in a game in LSU history. So. Assuming you get Angel Reese to be Angel Reese, and she sat most of the second half because she took a 3-pointer passing, and Michaela went off. But if you get her to be inside, and then Flau'jae Johnson and Haley Van Lith, who has not shot the ball well yet, but you figure is going to break out at some point offensively, and Morrow has been very, very solid. They're kind of like. LSU's football team is like basketball on grass, and this is like basketball on court. Because they're just so prolific offensively. And are they playing the defense that they want to play? No, not so far. They gave up 14 3-pointers, I think, to Kent State the other day. But offensively, Michaela Williams. She's worth coming to see. If you can find a ticket to LSU women's basketball, which is a kind of a problem, it's kind of an issue. Come down and see her play because she's been tremendous. And as Kim Mulkey said, she probably is just scratching the surface of what she can be.
Looks like it's going to be a tough ticket to get to a gym meet too. We'll get to that at some point later on. Reed, I would just ask you. Obviously, some of the very well-established veterans on the LSU women's team. They've had to come take a seat next to Kim for a while and just watch the action unfold from the bench. How much of reset that for us, if you would, but also how much of this has been a surprise to you?
I think obviously Michaela's the biggest surprise. The offense has looked kind of clunky at times. That's not a huge surprise. We knew when you incorporate all this new talent, it's going to take a while to figure it out and get everybody on the same page. So the offense, because it has looked kind of uneven at times, that's not a huge surprise. The defense as well, again, easing into the new season, getting your legs under you, getting conditioned. I think that'll come with time. So, I haven't seen anything particularly that's should be a huge concern going forward, but like you mentioned, the veterans sitting out, it was kind of weird. You asked Kim exactly why Angel Reese didn't play the second half against Kent State, and why Kateri Poole didn't play at all. She declined to go into specifics. We don't know exactly why. But if you look in the first half, Angel took a 3-pointer and then got the quick hook after that. So it might have something to do with her shot selection. We know against the Colorado game, Kim was kind of disappointed in some of the effort that the vets displayed. And then I assume Angel Reese was a part of those. Part of that group, because after that game, she said that she sort of felt that she let her team down against Colorado, and that she wasn't sharp enough defensively. So I think nothing to be concerned about super early. There's going to be some growing pains. Luckily for LSU, I think they've got a lot of time to figure it out, and a lot of cupcakes between now and the start of the SEC schedule.
Someone said something to me this week that I think it could definitely be true. That LSU went 34-2 last year in route to winning the national championship. This could be a better team with more losses this year.
Oh, sure.
Obviously the next big test is in 2 weeks against Virginia Tech here, and then of course they've got South Carolina coming in, who has looked very good in their first 2 games, ascended to the number 1 ranking. Some other tough games in the SEC, but it could take some time to figure out. But it's not about November. It's about March and early April, and so no one knows that better than Kim Mulkey. And it's a great assemblage of talent. It's not a great team right now, but it's a glittering assemblage of talent that I think back to the most talented LSU women's team. To me, was Simone Augustus, Sylvia Fowles, Tamika Johnson on that team that lost to Baylor and Kim Mulkey in 2005. Because 2 of those people are going to be in the Naismith Hall of Fame. Yeah, Simone and Sylvia. So that's does LSU have 2 Naismith All-Americans on this team? I don't know. They might have 1 in Angel Reese. But the point is, the whole collective team. Oh, this team's probably a little better overall.
The LSU women play again at Southeastern at 7 p.m. Friday. They play TSU.
Sold out game, by the way.
Well, I mean, Kim's doing this for a reason.
Right.
She's going back to Hammond for a reason. They play Texas Southern at 7 p.m. on Monday as well. Reed, these are obviously outclassed opponents. Just anything that you'd like to see over these next 2 games?
I'd like to see the offense find more of a rhythm. I'd like to see Haley Van Lith shoot the ball better. Shots kind of struggled through the first 4 games. That's going to come around. That's not a concern. So I'd like to see her, I guess, be more aggressive and sort of look for a shot and sort of get downhill.
Do you think she's kind of pressing a little bit?
I think so. I think she's in this new role as a point guard, a lead guard. She hasn't really done that before, and so I think it's taken some time to get her feet wet in that role. I think she can just sort of be more loose and just more just, I guess, aggressive. I just want to see her attack downhill, get to the rim, get to the free throw line, get more of a rhythm. I think we haven't seen the best of Haley Van Lith yet. It's coming, and so hopefully, I guess, over the next 2 games, she can sort of give us a glimpse of that.
Rep?
It was Reed's right. They were very clunky, and they have not played very good interior defense overall. I would say that really needs to improve. It was very poor. They only led Kent 39-37 at the half, and they went off in the second half, 70 points, which is a school record in a half. Second half. So maybe I saw strides. It's only 1 half, but I saw some strides made in the second half. After the first half, I'm like, man, they're really struggling here. But the interior defense needs to improve. And are they missing LaDeja Williams? Yeah, but Samaya Smith has played very well. If it weren't for Michaela Williams and all her fireworks, we'd be talking a lot more about her improvement from 1 year to the next. She's a very smooth looking player. I just like the way she moves with and without the ball.
Very fluid.
Yeah, and so she's a nice player, and they're a little at a height deficit to some of these top teams, and they just have to overcome that with some attitude and tenacity. that you think would come from their head coach. So
well, and they do have two tenacious rebounders as well. But yes, they're height challenged in some respects.
And I think it's also important to point out the fact that Anissa Morrow, the last 3 games, has come off the bench. That's been a little bit of a surprise. We all expected her to be in the starting lineup, and she started against Colorado. But Colorado, with their 2 6'3" post players, Aaron Vonleh and Krewe Miller, they sort of had their way with LSU down low. And I think in response to that, Mulkey decided to put more height in the starting lineup and start Samaya. And that's worked out really well so far. Anissa's come off the bench. She was one of the best players in the country last year. She averaged 25 and 12. So nobody was really expecting her to come off the bench. We don't know exactly how comfortable she is yet in that role, or if she will continue to come off the bench moving forward. But like you said, against Kent State, she looked really good, and she might be, if that role sticks for her, she might be the player that sort of leads the second unit.
And no knock on Del Rosario, the freshman, the tallest player, 6'5". She just needs a little more time to develop. It's harder for post players than guards.
Much the same way Samaya did.
Yeah, for sure. So she's coming off there. She played a few minutes the other day. She's had her moments, but expecting her to come in and be in the starting lineup is not realistic.
We will wrap it up there. LSU's next toughest test, the LSU women's next toughest test, I think we would all agree would be against Virginia Tech. That's on November 30th.
November 30th.
November 30th, and that will be part of sort of their journey toward conference play, and then of course you get into January, February, March, and April, which of course are the months that matter. As you said, Rab, we tend to think that maybe the record won't be as strong as it was last year, but it doesn't mean that they don't have as strong a team or stronger when it's all said and done. Right. So we will wrap it up there. We will be back here on Monday. Again, we're here on Mondays and Thursdays live on all our social channels, on our YouTube channel specifically, YouTube channel LSU Tigers at NOLA.com. If you don't catch us live, you can catch us anytime on that same YouTube channel after the fact. We are brought to you today and every day by Champion Wealth Strategies. To learn more about Champion Wealth Strategies, please go to championwealthstrategies.com and plan like a champion today. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever other finer podcasts are found if you choose not to check us out on YouTube. Whether you check us out on this podcast, on this fine podcast or not, please subscribe to The Advocate, whether it's our print edition or our digital editions. To do that, you go to theadvocate.com/subscribe. That's theadvocate.com/subscribe. And get a hold, as I say, get a hold of our newsletter. It's a daily newsletter, but Rab handles that 3 days a week, so support your local journalist. To do that, you go to theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. That's theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. LSU versus Georgia State at 7 o'clock on Saturday night, ESPN2 and in Tiger Stadium. And we will be there, obviously, to discuss everything after the fact on Monday. For Reed Darcey and for Sevi Ballesteros, my name's Perryn Keys. This has been the LSU Sports Insider.